good, everybody? It's your man, Governor Wildstar. What's up? And welcome to the Black Side of Liberty. I appreciate each and all of you, every one of you out there that are jumping into this extraordinary conversation I'm going to be having with a wonderful guest who I'm going to be introducing to you in just a moment. But first, of course, you know what to do. If you're out there watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that bell. Subscribe right now so you can receive updates as to when I drop more videos in the future. And stay in tune and what's going on. And of course, please be sure to share any of my videos. Of course, this one here that you're going to be watching, any other my other Black Side of Liberty podcast, as well as, you know, any of my viral videos, me getting arrested by the cops, me challenging the courts in court, all of that good stuff. Speaking of court, that's what we're here for the Black's Law edition of the Black Side of Liberty. So we're going to be talking about a whole lot of that good stuff right here, right now. And definitely connect with me on social media. If you haven't already, visit my website, governorwildstar.com, like you can see right there at the bottom of the screen. Check it out, governorwildstar.com. Connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any one of those, and make sure that we're staying in the loop and keeping each other in the loop of what's really happening down here on the underground, right? And we want to let people know what's happening from the streets. And it takes independent journalists, people like you and me, to go ahead and have those groundbreaking stories and bring the information that's happening in our own neighborhoods to light. So I need each and every one of you to help in that effort. And also, please be sure to donate. Donate. Any little bit, every little bit helps. So you just go on my website, governorwildstar.com, click on that donate tab, and be sure to connect with yours truly, okay? And if you are out there watching and want to say what's up, just be sure to drop a comment. I'll drop that on the screen. If you have any questions, even if you're talking dumb shit, speak it. Let's talk about it. And we're going to have a great conversation. And like I said, today is the second part 2 of the Black's Law edition of Black Side of Liberty. First time I was hoping to have my guest here to speak with about some information, since he is very well aware of our law system. And he wasn't there before, but he's here with us now, and I'm going to introduce to you my man, Drew. What's up, Drew, and welcome to the Black Side of Liberty, bro.
How are you doing? I do apologize for missing the last episode. I was excited, but I spent a little 15-day stint in the county.
Oh, shit. So you're going to have to tell us about that first, because you did mention that you had to sit down a little bit. For 15 days to be exact, for whatever reason. So what the hell happened, Drew?
Well, it's been an interesting ride, to be quite honest with you. And it's not something that I can just tell you briefly. You have to understand the history behind it. What I did several years ago is I entered into court in a civil matter, a child custody case, and immediately began asking questions about jurisdiction. Who are you? How are you doing this? How are you administering my estate? And asking all these questions of a judge. Pretty quickly, the judge started ignoring all of that and this and that. So as I began learning, this was about 5 years ago, I began learning and ended up forcing that judge out of his position. Judges don't quit and they don't get fired. They get the option for early retirement so that they don't lose their state benefits. So that was David Westfall out here in Colorado in the 7th Judicial. So got him out of office pretty quickly. And another judge stepped in and carried the mantle. So I came to the realization that you can never win in their system. There is a commercial system. It's designed against us. It utilizes inapplicable statute and things like that. And these judges don't care about law, constitution, or anything like that. I have met, just to be very clear, I have met some amazing judges in my time, that adhere to law, adhere to statute, or adhere to constitution. They do exist. So I'm not anti-judge. I'm actually a big proponent of the office of the judiciary. I just, some of the ones that I've run into, we've definitely shouldn't be in their position. So Long story short, basically what I did is, as these matters progressed, all of a sudden I started gaining criminal charges, dogs or vicious dogs and things like that. I got a child abuse charge for taking my son out of the hospital for a minor fever.
Oh my God.
Yeah, when I already claimed him on the public record as mine and challenged the court. They claim me that I stole from my own business. So all kinds of fun situations. So I just got fed up and I basically took the judges, put them under contract, utilizing both their oath and a well-written contract, which I believe you put some information on the banner there.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah, some of that information is on there. That's a great resource. So basically, I put the judges under contract, pulled out of their system, and went to arbitration. In 2019, Brett Kavanaugh's very first case, Henry Sheen v. Archer White, the Supreme Court upheld the authority of common law arbitration. Our answer is always in the law. And, just to be frank, statute, code, ordinance, rules, those are not law. Those are the will of the government that are made for the government. Law is our protection from the government, and it's made pursuant to the Constitution. It goes through due process of either the appellate court or the Supreme Court. So it's made as a protectant to us.
Yeah.
So the Supreme Court upheld arbitration. So I took the judges through arbitration and I won. And this happened in November 27th, 2019. Immediately, they issued warrants for my arrest. As soon as they found out I had won, they retaliated instantly. I was able to kind of stay off the grid for a while. And then I began, very recently calling to collect on the amount owed. And they called that retaliation against a judge and had me arrested by basically a SWAT team, put me at $1 million bond or $1 million bail. Yeah, I was America's #1 criminal for about 2 weeks right there. So
that's crazy.
Well, yeah, they were trying to get me on RICO predicate acts. They were trying to get me on collusion, on piracy was even mentioned. And even going into placing false documents on the public record. And what they realized is that, the way we have to operate at all times is be better than our system. So I had process after process after process that they can't beat. And so in the end of it, the only thing they could tag on me was harassing a judge, which of course can't stand because my arbitration award proved that she was never in capacity as a judge.
Yeah.
A commercial entity can never have capacity over a flesh and blood human, only over the estate, which of course is probate fraud. So, that's how they've been doing this. And, wow. I've claimed my estate and I've pulled myself separate. So yeah, I do apologize for missing. I was excited about the show, but yeah, I'm here now. I ended up getting the bond lowered to $45,000 and some amazing people helped get me out. And here I am.
That's crazy.
Well, yeah, and I'm fighting. So the first thing I did is I challenged the jurisdiction of the court. I said, what's the cause and nature of the accusations? The judge never answered any of it. So, of course, I've gone after that judge. Further than that, they brought in a senior judge who's actually an arbitrator, which creates a conflict of interest because now he's an arbitrator trying to use a state ministerial process to override an arbitration award from a rival company.
So, wow, that's crazy.
Yes.
It's sad because, like this commenter is saying, if we go against the government, we pretty much end up in jail, is what you're saying. And that's really it. If you challenge the system, they're going to find a way to retaliate. And in your case, they drummed up charges, out of the blue that had nothing to do with anything criminal per se, but treated you like one pretty much and threw you in jail because of it.
And they put on a heck of a show. I mean, it was trying to scare me. And I think about me. I work with wolves, dingoes, foxes, wrestle alligators. I wasn't too terrified of a bunch of people, even with guns. So their message didn't really affect me. I came out swinging, which is what we have to do. Absolutely. The government will strong arm you. They will try to scare you. But your job is to stay within line with the Constitution and stand up. Because if we don't, they're going to roll right over you.
Right. So let's rewind a little bit because you just dropped a whole lot of
I
knowledge in
did.
a
I
little bit
warned
of
you. I warned you.
time. And you may be overwhelming those people out there with a little pea brain mind, or even those that still that may have a little bit of understanding and may not fully comprehend all of the things that you are saying. So first things first, what are the different types of law, actual law?
Actual law. There's 5 jurisdictions of law that we've found. There's common law, which, of course, common law, common sense. Everyone's heard the term common law. It's not just common
Mhm.
law marriage, but common law is the most powerful law, the most powerful man-made law that we have. There's admiralty, which deals, of course, maritime, lost at sea, things like that. That is utilized in a lot of our court systems. So if you can prove that you're alive, a lot of times that'll knock out some of these admiralty courts. They're relying on a death certificate. Let's see. Then there's military, of course. We're all familiar with military jurisdiction. Uh, then there's equity, which is basically what a lot of the courts try to use. Commercial law, things like that. So military, equity, common law, admiralty, and gosh, I can't quite remember the last one off the top
Tort
of my.
law
Do
or
what?
something? Tort law?
No, not tort. Tort actually falls. Tort is a claim that you would use. Uh, tort's a claim, a specific claim that you would use when you go into the court system.
Okay. So you mentioned about how,
Oh, ecclesiastical. I apologize. Ecclesiastical is a 5th jurisdiction.
okay.
So, because
So,
the church does have to have its place. There was a lot of discussion of, was America founded in Christianity, this and that. Well, when you look at Christianity and pretty much every religion, there's a lot of the same basis. When you look at the Magna Carta and things like that. So a lot of religion is pulled into law. In fact, arbitration predates Roman civil law and is in the Bible. so
wow.
so yeah, and that's common law. So we do find that throughout there. So I apologize. It's late in the evening here. So
No problem. Now, with regards to common law itself, like you said, it should represent common sense and what we understand as people. But that legalese here in this Black's Law Dictionary, this big thick ass book, which I'm pretty sure you've thumbed through many times. And this is the 11th edition. I don't even know what edition they're up to now, but it's gotten out of control with regards to how law is defined according to this book. And you did also mention how statutes and penal codes aren't law, but they're imposed upon we the people. You get pulled over, they recite some traffic code or say you violated some penal code or whatever the case may be. So let's just get down to the bottom of it. Are statutes and penal codes law?
no, they're not. Law can only exist through due process, and a bunch of people sitting around deciding things is not considered due process. So again, when I cite something like Henry Sheen, it's because it went through a court, then to an appellate court, and then up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, here's what we're declaring as law pursuant to the Constitution.
Right.
So, and then not to say that statute doesn't have its place. Statute is a limitation that we put on the government. And Hugo asked a very interesting question here that I should mention. Here in Colorado, when you look at the courts, they'll say we're a court of general jurisdiction. So they're not even functioning under any of the 5 constitutionally recognized jurisdictions. It's what we call.
What does that mean? General jurisdiction.
Right. Well, it's a quasi or a mirrored jurisdiction. If you read pretty much any code of judicial conduct, it basically says, hey, put on a good show so that the people believe that we're judges.
Right.
Because if you're doing stupid things as a judge and the people start going, well, I'm not going to follow your orders and this and that, and the people start revolting, that's what we run into. So it is a sham. The Supreme Court, I think, gosh, I can't remember the case. Our government is in fact de facto after the 1933 act, and the Supreme Court's ruled saying, well, it is de facto, but it's the best we've got, and we can't really just replace it.
Oh
So,
my God.
you have to make your
They're
de
not
facto
even
thing
trying
right.
to fight against it. They're just accepting it pretty much and expecting we the people to accept it also,
Well,
right?
and again, we run into a situation that if that government wasn't there and we just pulled it out all of a sudden, what would we have other than anarchy and chaos? So we have to have some kind of guidelines, some kind of rules. But, the government has overstepped and has grown substantially in the last several years.
Right. Well, I believe that according to common law, people would respect the common laws that exist. Don't kill each other, don't steal from each other, don't lie to each other, things that we do naturally. So there's a natural order, I guess, that exists in humankind. But to construct this society, it's been put on paper as to what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing, and it just differs depending on where you go. And it's not really, I guess, applicable to we the people when these people are pretty much just drawing up and creating laws, like you said, based off of their own opinion. They're not going through a legislative process. They're not even consulting us to say, is this something that you want on the books as a law? One of those things is the driver's license, which I guess is being imposed upon us and forced upon us. And that's one of the things I've argued before is the need for the driver's license, which I guess through the Supreme Court says you have the right you have the natural right to travel from one place to another. And no state should be issuing driver's license, and they can't impose that upon you. And you have the right to ignore that with impunity. So this was, discovered, I guess, by the Supreme Court. But you don't see police officers or state law really recognizing that. So is a driver's license really needed by law, I guess?
Well, again, you kind of have to look at the framework and what's occurred. And in the Act of 1933, the United States went bankrupt, declared publicly its bankruptcy. And as you're well aware, if you don't cure bankruptcy within 7 years, 11 if you file the right documentation, you don't exist. Well, to this date, obviously, the United States has not cured the bankruptcy. In fact, a lot of the we could get into all kinds of stuff, but when you look at a lot of the $1,200 handouts that they're doing, that's trying to help clear up that bankruptcy and sign contractually agree that they're no longer de facto and stuff like that. But won't get into all that today. But yeah, so after that Act of 1933, what we've seen is a change, a change in the responsibility of us and a change in what the government has started doing, because the states then gave up their sovereignty to basically assist the larger government. The states, started creating more and more statutes. The courts openly converted into for-profit, privately held corporations, and you can find them on any Dun & Bradstreet site. Look up, here in Colorado, it's the Judiciary Courts for the state of Colorado. You look it up, and it's listed as a for-profit, privately held corporation. I know some of them that are run as nonprofits, but they're not government entities anymore. They are there to generate revenue. So what we're seeing, and I'm not anti-police officer. I don't ever want to see individuals get harmed or anything like that. But what we're seeing is the peace officers at the time that are mentioned throughout state constitutions, state statutes, and everything, converted into law enforcement. They're called law enforcement, not peace officers anymore, and they're tasked solely with revenue generation. And that's what they do, is they push these commercial codes upon the people in a way to generate revenue. And the big secret is this all falls under the 14th Amendment. When you become a 14th Amendment citizen, you can just Google the word citizen, and it says one subservient to the government, versus the preamble of the Constitution. First, the preamble of the Constitution that says we are basically the wellspring from which the government authority flows. So it reduces us below the government. And then obviously as a citizen, you're bound by what your government wants to do and how they do it and everything like that. So we run into that situation. So, when you get a driver's license and stuff, a lot of government will agree that that is your contract. I had a buddy that did not have a driver's license, got pulled over, showed the officers, and I mean, the sergeant came out and everything, showed him, hey, I have the right to drive. There's countless laws, Ex parte Dickey, Kent v. Doles.
I got a page of them right here. You got Marbury versus Madison, Shuttlesworth versus City of
Shuttlesworth, big one, yeah.
Murdoch versus Pennsylvania, all saying these are Supreme Court cases, by the way. And I guess the way law works is it's built around case law. So if you can recite one of these citations and say, hey, according to the Supreme Court, one of these, I have the natural right as a human being to travel without a license.
And to own your property and use your property as it's supposed to be intended for. You buy a car, it's not there to, well, some of us buy nice cars for that, but not me, obviously. But, you buy a car, its intended use is to go travel, so the government can't say, well, you can buy a car, but you can't use it. You can buy a tractor, but you better not take it in the field.
Right.
They can't prohibit the use of your property for its intended use. That's protected, and that's protected by, like you said, a substantial amount of case law. So, there's a case here called People v. Nothis that very clearly states here in Colorado Supreme Court, you have the right to own property. You have the right to use the property on the public highways as it's intended to be used. Mm-hmm. The issue we run into is, and I believe, don't quote me on this, you might be able to look it up real quick. I think it's 49 CFR 37.3 F3. That's your driver's license code. It says that if you're in commerce, you need to have a driver's license.
Yeah. And it's a commercial driver's license. But if you're operating your car for traveling, exercising your right to travel, and since it is your property, you don't need a driver's license. You definitely should not be registering your car. That's pretty much essentially giving up your property to the state, The
law that requires you to register your property with the state. We're giving up our rights when we register our guns, when we do things like that.
Right.
You hit Murdoch v. Pennsylvania. Murdoch v. Pennsylvania very clearly states the state cannot issue a license, fine, or fee for a liberty right. Mm-hmm. And like I said earlier, Shuttlesworth v. Birmingham, Alabama clearly states if the state does that, you can ignore it and enjoy your right with impunity.
Exactly.
So, if you have it's already written in law, but again, you have to separate yourself from the system. And there's a lot of presumptions that are put in place that you have to overcome. They believe you're dead. They believe you're a bastard. If you look at your birth certificate, it'll have your mother's maiden name and your father's name. That makes you a bastard. You don't get the rights.
Right. Well, Matthew Johnson is saying it's hard to get pulled over and remember that code. Carry this shit in your in your glove compartment box. You know what I'm saying? Get yourself a constitutional driver's license, which is basically saying that you have the natural right to travel according to the Constitution. And you mentioned something about making the distinction that you're a living, breathing human being. And here in this Black's Law Dictionary book, everybody should have one. Get your ass one. If not, just look online and look up what they say in Black's Law of what a person is and how a natural person is defined. And I do this when I go to court and I establish jurisdiction, establish identity by letting them know I'm the natural person, blood and bones, me, that was born and is living. I'm not the fictional identity, the legal fiction identity that has been created for me by way of that birth certificate, which I denounce after learning this information. So why I want to ask you, I guess, why is establishing jurisdiction and identity important? Because when I do it, people want to clown me and say I look like a fool, of course, but they're speaking legalese in court, right?
Well, there's a 400-year-old maxim of law that says we are not bound by your legalese. Maxims are just, they supersede pretty much any law written. For example, an award is a judgment. That's a maxim of law. Failure to deny is to admit. That's a maxim of law. And those should all be in that Black's. And I do suggest Black's Law 10th. That's there's some really interesting things in there on the estate and other issues in there. And that's what the state did, is they created an estate, and they're administering the estate through probate, because there's those presumptions that you have to overcome. One, that you're dead. One, that you're an infant. And thanks, John. It doesn't spill. So one, that you're an infant. One, that you're not alive. One, that you're not of age. Because obviously in the times you had to become a certain age in order to take over your estate. Because remember, a lot of our law is derived from Old England and things like that. And dated, through the Magna Carta. It's been around for a long time. Right. John did ask a question about what do you do about unsafe drivers? And that, of course, is an issue that you run into common law. When you're driving down the road at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon and there's nobody on there and you're speeding, you're not causing harm to anybody. And the state can't be harmed by your actions. That's not a harm. So, John, to answer your question, the only way that the law is supposed to be applied is if there's an injured party.
Yeah.
So if I'm driving down the road and I veer off and I run through Governor Wildstar's mailbox, I injured his property. I need to pay for that. And he can, and under the Constitution, address that in court. He has the absolute right to do that, in states and federal, depending on the situation. So that's really where the law is supposed to be, is that, you getting drunk and falling down in your yard shouldn't be an arrestable offense.
Exactly. But that's the thing, is the district attorney, the prosecutors, they step in to say, we are representatives of the people. And when you get that criminal case, it says the people versus you, and so they're stepping up to say they're representatives of the people. And if you are not a citizen, then that shouldn't apply to you, especially, right?
Yeah. Well, and there is even code that says, I don't know it offhand, but did you give yourself to the authority of the state? Have you agreed? So again, where I stand, and what I've done is a little different, because contract, going back to maxims, the contract makes the law. When you look at Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution for the United States of America, it says the state cannot impair the obligations of contract. So with my specific case now, I have the state stepping in to protect its employees with an administrative process that impairs the obligation of me collecting on a debt that my contract says I can collect on. So again, that can't stand. But one of the things that you and I have discussed in the past, that me and a lot of people discuss, is you've got law and you've got what actually happens.
Right.
And the fortunate part, you can't talk law to a police officer. The dumbing down of America is not just the people. It's, who are asking to have their rights removed. You'll see it in the court systems. I'll go in front of a judge and they will, I'm an advertising marketing guy. I spent my career learning people's expressions and this and that. I'll rip off something to the judge and they'll just have the blankest look on their face. They don't know this stuff. They don't know what they're doing. They're puppets. And Colorado is well known for being one of the most, if not the most, corrupt judicial states that we have.
I have a little bit of knowledge that I've obtained about law. I've recited in court, and I've caught the damn judges off guard. My first time in talking about this shit in court, was able to get a judge to abandon the courtroom and leave, out the courtroom while we were talking mid-conversation. So, it's very layered. I ask anybody out there to watch any of my videos about this, and they want to label it sovereign citizen movement. We are all sovereign beings. We should have our natural sovereignty respected, especially living in a sovereign country, right?
You hit the nail on the head earlier when you were talking about statutes using the term person and things like that. There's several Supreme Court holdings, one of the latest being Wilson v. Omaha Indian tribe. Excuse, that's the way they wrote it back in 1979. So please don't think I'm being offensive. But it clearly states that, the statutes use the term person, which is not applicable to the sovereign. Therefore, statutes are not really applicable to the people. And it's an interesting case because it's a land dispute, which land is, the right to own land and everything is one of our huge rights. Mm-hmm. So it's absolutely applicable to just about everything that we do. So being able to utilize that. But again, when you're sitting there on the side of the road with a police officer and you spout out law, it's not going to go anywhere. I was about to tell you about my buddy who didn't have a driver's license, and they started questioning him, and they're like, "Do you have insurance?" And he's like, "Yeah, voluntarily." And they're like, "Well, that's our contract that you've contracted to agree to our statutory authority." So,
wait, insurance, car insurance, that should just be private, wouldn't it? Yeah, like medical insurance or life insurance.
So, but there's a lot of options out there. I've heard of a gentleman that walked into court and put a $3 million bond on the judge. The judge walked off the bench. I have.
Out of here. I don't want nothing to do with this.
Yeah, I have knowledge of a gentleman. I believe it was Idaho. Was sitting in a small courtroom, had his the DA had their documents sitting next to him. He pulled his case, found that they have all these secret bonds on us. He took a picture, called the bonding agencies, closed out the bonds, walked into court the next time and said, "I closed out all the bonds." Judge had to dismiss the case, and the DA got in a lot of trouble because, again, a court is a bank. They're there to make money. But things are starting to turn our way. I think I sent you the recent one, Khaleesi v. Cantrell, that happened in August 2019 in the Fifth Appellate. Anytime you go to court and a judge now is saying, "Well, we're going to have you pay court fees and fines," they can't do that anymore. They're
making me pay, and they're basically saying that if you don't pay, we're going to, put a lien on your income and, do a wage garnishment. I mean, the government is dirty, and they all are in cahoots with each other because they know this is a lie, but they benefit too much from it by our ignorance and our compliance. Because like you said, if we don't comply, it wouldn't exist.
Well, but this case is really interesting because it came to the knowledge of the court that if a judge is getting these fees and fines and it's going into the Judicial Employment Fund, mm-hmm. the judge has a direct interest in doing fees and fines, and therefore Fifth Amendment due process doesn't exist.
Right. So one of the other things I want to talk to you about, especially right now with this whole Black Lives Matter movement and demanding, criminal justice reform by saying that the criminal justice system inherently is racist, systematic racism through our judicial system. And so with you being very knowledgeable in many different court cases and so many different, I guess, aspects of this judicial system having been prejudiced against people of color, I want to ask you, is the criminal justice system racist, and how?
Well, that's a loaded question.
What idiot about questions is it? I mean,
well, let me try to answer that through history. We have to understand the old Honest Abe, freeing the slaves and everything like that happened back then. Definitely, was great. Don't get me wrong, but it was kind of secondary. The first court that was the first attack in the Civil War was Fort Sumter, which was a tariff collection court. So there was a lot of other moving parts to the Civil War, and of course, to the victors go the spoils, and one of the big spoils is being able to write history. The 14th Amendment is basically Abraham Lincoln didn't want our Black community to be recognized as people. Hugo, that's a good question. Let me get to that.
Yeah, don't let the questions throw you off. You can turn it
off. He didn't want to call our Black community people because there was still, up into the 60s and everything, there was still a lot of issue there, as we well know. So he was not ready to say, well, gosh, the Black community is above the government and they're the people that are recognized in the warrant that is the preamble. Abe was not willing to, and that would have caused at that time a lot of issue, of course, wrongfully, but it would have. So he created the 14th Amendment, which basically gave the Black community rights. Now, our rights don't come from the government. They come from God, nature, your birth, whatever you want to believe. That's what the Constitution is. The Constitution doesn't give you rights. The Constitution limits the government from infringement on your rights.
Exactly.
It's not a giving document, it's a limiting document. So when you look at it from that aspect, and then you look at the 14th Amendment, which quite literally flip-flops everything. You've got guns and everything in the Second Amendment. You've got due process in the Fifth Amendment. Why do we need to regurgitate that in the 14th Amendment? It's because the 14th Amendment flips the Constitution, saying that you're now a citizen under the government, and we're going to give you these rights, these civil rights. So they're, again, quasi or mirrored rights. They're rights that look like my rights.
Yeah. So from what I heard,
given can be taken.
So from what I learned and understood was that since the first 10 amendments are pretty much the original amendments, that every one after that is null and void. And but since it has been ratified and is in practice, I guess, that because they're imposed upon we the people, like you said, this 14th Amendment claiming us all now to be citizens, makes us under their authority. Even the 9th Amendment, which basically says that the government can't write down all of the rights that you have as a human being, that they will respect and recognize and protect. So you're right. I mean, there's kind of like loopholes left and right, but a lot of people don't read the Constitution, never read it before, even though it's this, small ass little pocketbook, little thin ass pocketbook. Okay, get yourselves one, okay, and keep it handy on you. I keep one in my car. I keep one on my person, just in case I have to show it to a policy enforcer. But yeah, I mean, even with the case of what is it, Dred Scott.
Dred Scott was a big one, yeah.
Historical case, it pretty much basically limited that personhood that we have through our judicial system, and it's still being applied today, wouldn't you say?
I would. And again, going back to your question of systematic racism, I don't think it's what I would call systematic racism. I think, that the Black community was dealt a bad hand based on history and everything, and it was designed that way. I mean, it was designed to keep the Black community at bay. We're looking at things, and I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat. Just in the 70s, Joe Biden didn't want Black students out in the schools because he didn't want a racial jungle. We had Blacks only bathrooms and Jim Crow, and of course statute law and stuff is never a meter for ethics, and you can never rely on it as such. But that stuff was allowed based on that 14th Amendment because the Black community didn't have recognized natural rights. Right. And so now going step forward, when we look at that 1933 Act, that's basically what the state has done is now everyone's a proud U.S. citizen, not an American, but a proud U.S. citizen. Right. And you've given up your rights. The Supreme Court has held, and I don't have that case in front of me right now, but if you adhere to the 14th Amendment, the first 8 amendments are not applicable to you. Yeah. You've forfeited the first 8 amendments by agreeing to be 14th Amendment citizen.
So one of the things that I do often is when I am having an interaction or an exchange with one of these law officials, I let it be known that I'm a sovereign national, that I'm a American national, and I'm not a citizen. So with me being a Black man, of course, they look at me like, oh, nigga, you're not supposed to know that shit, straight up. And I have to be drugged through the mud just to deal with it. But I want to ask you, knowing this information, learning this, how is it especially empowering for the Black community? Like, why do you think that the Black community should definitely gravitate towards learning about all of this? and how would it be helpful towards them?
Well, again, that's a broad question. First off, again, Herbert Hoover and stuff during the Kennedy assassination, started chiming words like conspiracy theorist, and the Southern Poverty Law Center started this sovereign citizen movement. And these things have negative connotation. Obviously, sovereign citizen is an oxymoron in and of itself, because you can't be it and be
That's why
sovereign.
I stopped using it once I was like, oh yeah, you're right.
Right. But as we look forward, Malcolm X said it best. Why would you let your enemy teach your children? We need not just, and I appreciate your question, but we all, regardless of the color of our skin, regardless of our background, need to have this education and need to start learning what's going on, because I'm getting my rights trampled on. I'm getting thrown in jail for following law, and law that they don't understand or like, but that's the way it is. And that has nothing to do with my skin color. That has to do with our assertion of our rights. And when it's you and me, we're not getting very far. When it's the 1,000 people listening right now stepping forward, we're getting heard. And that's what needs to start happening. You have to understand, this system has been in place, and we're dealing with geniuses on hiding this information, on keeping this from us. The idea that I walk in and say, and you do the same thing and say, I'm not a U.S. citizen. People are like, what?
Right.
It's unheard of.
And I was born and raised in Wisconsin, so they're like, what do you mean you're not a citizen? You were born here. No, it's a completely different distinction of a human being. And we got to understand that we're not property of the state. We're natural, blood breathing human beings.
Yeah. And I hate these terms. I call myself one of the people of Colorado. I try to keep it light. I don't like to use the word sovereign, because that just makes this trained gut reaction of terrorist, even though that's what law says. Even like I said, in Wilson v. Omaha Indian Tribe, 1979, it clearly says the sovereign. It's in our law, but boy, the use of it has been converted, and it's, I'm sure we've all seen the Hunger Games, getting into like the Mockingjay parts, where the video, and Hitler used this, the propaganda, that's what's winning wars. And the propaganda now is sovereign citizens are evil. And, I've got Luke that I hope is listening. Luke Ashlock's got a great video where he got pulled over, and, he said, well, who are you? And he started asserting his rights. And the police officer goes, we have a sovereign citizen. And right then, like 10 other cops show up.
Oh my God. Yeah.
They show up, and that's what happens.
I mean, I've even been approached by the FBI, our Federal Bureau of Investigations, and while you thinking they're out there, looking for criminals, they contacted me for standing up for my damn rights over a damn parking ticket, a traffic stop, and calling me, stalking me, harassing me and my family, showing up at court, to intimidate me and ask me about me being a sovereign citizen, and do I own guns, and do I know this organization? And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck you talking about. And you should know if I own guns, because it would be registered if I was a legal gun owner. If I had a damn gun, it would be none of your business any damn way, since it's my property. So I want to ask you about that also, because these people that are policy enforcers, they swear upon the United States Constitution to uphold it. And, they put their hand on the Bible, and they take an oath to defend it from all, enemies, foreign and domestic. Yet we don't see that. These oath keepers break their oath. What should be done when these oath keepers break their oath? Should we join the Boogaloo crew?
Well, the issue that you're going to run into is an unacknowledged contract is nothing. If you acknowledge their contract or their oath as a contract, and of course the terms and conditions of said contract are the Constitution, the the state constitution, whatever, the statute, rules, codes, ordinances, you could set those as the terms and conditions of your contract. And yeah, Sheila's saying it's all about controlling the masses. It is. It's the trickery that they use. But what we're coming to find, and like I said, what I've done is I've taken contract to a new level. And we have the inalienable and unalienable right. Lienable, there are no aliens. They can't lien our rights. The inalienable and unalienable right to unlimited contract. And contract is protected by Constitution, Article 1, Section 10. So contract makes the law. There are more maxims of law about contract than you can imagine. And so utilizing that aspect, what I've actually been studying recently, and I have yet to put this into play, though I've written it up, is taking a judge or a police officer's signed oath as their binding contract, acknowledging it on the public record, and then using the terms and conditions and noticing them a violation of contract and doing commercial liens, because a commercial lien can't be removed by a judge. It's a commercial lien. It's extrajudicial. So I haven't tried that. There was a gentleman here in Colorado several years ago that a lot of people have heard of, Bruce Doucette, and he had a great mind. But he didn't have process. And what he did was he found that a lot of the judges in Colorado hadn't filled out their oath and bond according to the Constitution, which states you will fill out an oath and bond before the commencement of your term. Most of the judges do it after or whenever they get around to it because, the Constitution, they could care less. So he started going and just leaning their houses and basically doing that, created his own grand jury and basically went and did that. And he's spending 39 years in prison right now. So we have to be careful. And that's what I said. When they came after me, I looked like America's #1 criminal, but they couldn't pin any of it.
So it really is like a mob. I mean, this is really like some dirty, I don't even know what to call it. It's so beyond me as far as the scope and magnitude of what they can do to you, all simply under the guise of law, the color of law.
The color of law.
Like they're actually abiding by that law. I want to ask you that also. These lawmakers, these legislators, and the ones that do impose that, like the judges, when lawmakers break the law, what should we, the people, do? Should we join the Boogaloo crew?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. And that's the issue we run into. Like I said, I took them through arbitration. The issue with arbitration, under the common law, there is no enforcement. You're supposed to enforce it on your own or through contract. What I'm doing in arbitration is there's a Title 9 USC 9 I filed for confirmation of the arbitration award so that I could then use the government to enforce my award and enforce the terms and conditions of my contract, which, the law is very clear that they have to. Well, it's been 7 months and they haven't. Again, we're dealing with absolute corruption to the point that they don't even follow the simple word of law anymore when they see that their buddies are involved. So, which is why I ended up starting to collect on my own, because my contract allows it. It's an obligation of contract. I can lien houses. I can, I've taken durable power of attorney, irrevocable durable power of attorney over these people because I appointed them as trustees of my estate, and I moved forward, and all according to contract that has been upheld now by 2 separate arbitral tribunals. So what we run into, I think, is the biggest issue is enforcement. And until, and again, I'm not preaching violence or anything like that, but until we get a grand jury of the people in every state, and until we have a militia that follows Constitution, you see a lot of these militias out there and they're just basically following the police and going, gosh, we just want to be police. We just didn't go through the system. That's not a militia. A militia is independent under the Second Amendment, and it's there to enforce the grand jury,
right?
The grand jury, because we're not going to get. A gentleman was asking about respect from the police. We're not going to get the police to enforce these things. When you throw law at a law, and there are some amazing sheriffs. Don't get me wrong, and there are some that It's just they'll understand the law and they'll respect it and they'll understand the Constitution. But like you say, a lot of them are policy enforcers and they don't know. So when they don't know, it's tough for us to teach them because that shouldn't be our responsibility. They should know this going in.
Exactly. Don't take the damn job if you don't even know what your job is, but they're enforcing this law, these de facto office,
commercial code,
these rogue enemies of the state. I call them out what they are. And it's sad that you're right. It has to come to people of the community, we the people, to actually know this information and then act on it. And I think that's really what the Boogaloo crew is doing. They're doing their best to establish themselves as being the militiamen, the ones to call on, since the actual oath keepers, there's a group out there called the Oath Keepers. You can look them up. Ex-military, ex-law enforcement, police officers, or whatever the case may be. But try to call on them to assist you. They won't. You got the 3%ers out there. They won't. So it's like, who's going to step up to the plate as far as having the arms to follow through? You can build your common law grand jury, which is we the people coming together to say we are the grand jury. We're higher than the court.
I believe it was, not to interrupt you, I believe it was Scalia that stated several years ago that the grand jury is the fourth branch of government.
Yeah, but they don't respect that. If you try to I try to inform so many people that, hey, if 28 of us, I believe that's the number, don't quote me, but I believe it's 28, 25. Okay, so if 25 of us claiming ourselves as people, recognizing our natural personhood as human beings, came together and said, we are now the common law grand jury of where I am, Fresno County, and we established ourselves as such, then we would have higher authority over the grand jury, over the judge, over the police, district attorney, over the police officers. But they don't
reverse anything that's done by any state court or federal court.
Exactly. But it's like, again, people's ignorance about this and their naivety, I guess, or their fear prevents them from wanting to do it and step up to the plate. But we need people to be brave enough to do exactly that. And it's sad that we don't right now.
Well, and I think what we're seeing is this stuff so embedded, and so hidden from us that even though it says it, like you said, right in the Constitution, and, that they can't prohibit the grand jury and this and that, the actual processes are really well hidden. I mean, we're dealing with masters of deception,
right.
We are. This is not their first rodeo. When you look at, the Edward Mendel House letter that's in the Library of Congress to Woodrow Wilson, talking about how we're going to be chattel and assigned numbers, and that they're going to have so much plausible deniability that we can never argue. And it's all happened. Everything that he said in that letter has happened. I'll have to find that and send that to you. But it's a quick Google, Edward Mendel House letter to Woodrow Wilson. It's scary. It's very scary, and it's real, and it's hidden, even though it's sitting right in the Library of Congress.
People don't realize that number that is being issued to them is that Social Security number. I just had my first child, and at the hospital, they came in as soon as he was born from this Social Security office saying, we got to get you on the birth certificate, issue your son a birth certificate. They did this every day that we were in the hospital. We were there maybe 7 days or I believe longer. But they came in there each and every day, even though we said we don't want a birth certificate. We don't want to document our child and register him as property with the state. So had to fight tooth and nail just to pretty much let them know that we don't want that. And it's up to us, we the people, to.
Well, and like I said, that falls under admiralty. You in essence are abandoning your child to the state when you fill out that birth certificate. And so anything abandoned after 7 years can be claimed. I myself, like I said in my contract, I claimed my son at age 2. I claimed him. I said, he's mine. He's my flesh and blood. The rights to blood and kinship supersede whatever this de facto joke of a court is trying to do. But it has not been successful as of yet, because even our courts don't follow law. They don't follow what's right. They don't follow ethics. They follow procedure. And it's becoming more and more prevalent, because I have another friend that did a lot of the things that I did, and they're reacting in the exact same way. The judges across, quite a distance away are doing the exact same things and filing the exact same things in response to her filings, which of course leads us to believe that there is somebody pulling the strings.
Yeah.
And the dumbing down of America, they don't want judges that go in there and challenge the law. They don't want police officers that go, gosh, should I really be doing this?
Right.
They want followers. And so what we're seeing, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, our veterans took an oath to protect us. You'll notice that our veterans are one of the most mistreated groups out there.
Right.
For good reason. Because they're the ones that are going to stand up and fight and know how to fight. So they're a danger. One of my favorite things, I'm a big Norman Rockwell fan. You've seen that graphic of the child that was running away sitting next to the police officer at the soda shop.
Yeah.
And then you see the recent rendition of it with a military style thug. And that's what we've become now. The police, and again, I'm not promoting harm or anything to any police officers, but the police are the standing army that our forefathers warned us of, this law enforcement group. The Supreme Court has held and continues to hold that they have no duty to serve and protect, because their duty after that 1933 act is purely revenue generation.
Right. And that's why I'm running for governor, man, because that's the only way I feel like we can overturn that and fix it, is at an executive level. Whether it's mayor or governor, you got to be in charge of things. President, even. That's why I said vote libertarian, because the only damn libertarian candidate for president it will step up to that plate knowing this information. But that's another thing that I want to ask you, is because a lot of people have it under the assumption that, or are under the assumption that, in order for you to practice law, you need to go to law school, you need to be approved by the Bar Association, you need to go through their system in order to be a part of their system. So do you need to be bar approved to practice law?
Well, again, you're running into the law versus the reality. The practice of law has been deemed a liberty right. The Constitution specifically says counsel. It doesn't say lawyer. An attorney is designed to attorney you to the court. That's why when you have a criminal case, the first thing they do is go get that plea deal, because they're just trying to make money for the court. Their job is to attorney you to the court. If you look at the latest Corpus Juris Directi, it's very clear that their first duty is to the court, not to their client. So counsel means that I should be able to sit next to you and be your ear and be your assistance, period. So what we run into is, the Supreme Court, and I don't have the citings right in front of me right now, has held that the practice of law is a liberty right. And again, going to Murdoch v. Pennsylvania, you can't issue a license for a right. And Shuttlesworth v. Birmingham, if you do, you just ignore it and enjoy your right with impunity. So now here's something fun for you just to chew on. The Bar Association, of course, is a private foreign member association. They can't license you. They give you a bar card. It doesn't say license to practice law, because there is no such thing. So the state of Colorado has it written in their code that in order to be a district court judge, you have to be licensed to practice law for 5 years. Axiomatic, if there's no such thing as a license, there are no district court judges in the state of Colorado.
Wow.
So they're just administrators. They follow an ministerial process, and that's what we're dealing with. So in every state, every state's got to have something very similar to that. But I digress. The practice of law is a right. And you're not going to get far in court.
I know.
I've been there. It's built against us, and they use the legalese latches. They use the terms, and they use ASL to prevent us from being able to get in there. I had to recently go. I'm in the 11th Circuit Appellate Court right now, because the judge in my arbitration case unlawfully converted my summary motion process into a full-blown civil case, sent out summonses and this and that, which are not applicable. So I went to this appellate court and said, what is this guy doing? You know, the law says he will do this. It's supposed to be done in 21 days.
Right.
It's been 7-8 months, and this judge is still just carrying it on like it's a full-blown civil case, allowing all kinds of filings that aren't allowed. And, you know, because the thing is, after 90 days, if they didn't argue the arbitration award, it's done deal. They can't argue anything after that. They've got 90 days to say, hey, there was a conflict with the arbitrator. And again, even at that point, the scope of the court is very narrow, that it has to be an infraction based on the arbitral process, not the arbitral decision. So, you know, again, I'm in a situation where I'm waiting on this judge. So I had to, and I consider myself versed. You know, I write a lot of cases. I study a lot of case law. But boy, going into that appellate realm is an entirely new entity, entirely new. And the way they write things, I mean, you have to basically deconstruct your brain and reconstruct it in their pattern, because they make it so there's appellate attorneys that are specific to appellate court. Their goal is to keep us out. And they do a good job of it.
Because we're very reliant upon this judicial system, I guess, to keep this lawful society in place, the law society. But like you said, they're pretty much acting under the color of law. And it's sad that people think if you remove it, there will be chaos. There will be anarchy, not in the traditional sense, which means that we will exist peacefully in the natural order and respecting people, but in a anarchical, chaotic, you know, sense that they've created through propaganda by making it seem like if they're not in control, things will get out of control. But
you also have to realize, sorry to interrupt, there are some great things happening right now in our court system, and especially at the Supreme level. Like I said, this Calisti v. Cantrell, they're calling courts out saying, whoa, you can't profit off these guys being in front of you. Ulrich v. Butler, 2010, clearly says a judge that breaks the law is no longer a judge. You know, he loses all subject matter jurisdiction and all his orders are void. I think it was 2007, one of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's, she did the affirmation on this one. Nelson v. Colorado, no relation, but, you know, they upheld Coffin, that the courts cannot carry on from a presumption of guilt. You know, basically in that case, a clerk said, I'm not going to give you your money back unless you show me that the judge recognized that you're innocent. I don't have to prove that to you. So that case in itself can actually deconstruct the entirety of the way that our law enforcement is operating, because they operate consistently off the presumption of guilt.
Yeah.
So we are in a situation now where our Supreme Court is starting to really step up and do some pretty amazing things. So, you know, when you have a court that is following the law, that respects the law and the Constitution, that's a good thing. And we need to support that. You know, it's not all a criminal organization. There are some amazing judges out there that are doing the right thing.
Well, it would be great if that be the case, but it seems like, again, when you got all of these Supreme Court cases, old as cases, case law on the record, and they still are not recognizing them, the system is broken. It needs to be reformed, and you need people brave enough to do it at an executive level. You know what I mean?
And again, you're running into the situation where it's not the courts that are enforcing it. It's the lower courts, the inferior state de facto commercial courts are enforcing these rules. They're not real courts.
But so I challenged the jurisdiction of a judge on my case, sent it to federal court. Federal court responded back saying, well, the judge has judicial immunity, so there's nothing we can do about it. Sorry. So, I mean, it's like our hands are being tied on purpose, because they don't want us to be able to overturn those lower courts, because then other people would become more powerful off of that information. It would empower we the people.
Right. Well, and I think, you know, I saw that case that you're talking about, the one you sent. You know, one of my statements that I put in when I'm dealing with judges, I clearly state the warrant that is the preamble guarantees Article 1 of the Constitution for the United States of America, where plaintiff has the right to redress by those claiming to be or claiming to act under governmental authority. Defendant's sovereign immunity does not bar this action at law. Defendants vacated defendants' respective offices by acts in excess of law and constitution at the time of occurrence and forfeited any immunities. It is a fundamental principle of law that nobody is above the law. The governmental immunity clause only applies to government actors when they are performing their actions of their office defined by their office in good faith. And the United States Supreme Court has made the ruling regarding public officials being held liable for actions done or failure to perform required actions in the case of Millbrook v. United States, Bivens v. Six, Murdoch v. Pennsylvania, Owens v. City of Independence is a really good one, Maine v. Philabout, and Hafner v. Mello. The laws are there. And again, you know, you're running into a situation where you got a judge that can't make judicial decisions. She's purely an administrator. Made a judicial decision. And that's where we have to start turning them around. And, you know, the question is, though, in your situation, gosh, you file into the appellate court, and then, this, you know, the process is daunting.
It really is. And it drags on forever. I mean, like I said, I'm on trial right now for contempt of court for simply videotaping in court, which I guess has been protected, natural right and protected right according to the Supreme Court, yet they still aren't recognizing that. And they put that
darn First Amendment. They don't like it.
Exactly. And 6 counts of that equals 6 years, since they're a year each. And I'm just feeling like it's too daunting, it's too overwhelming, and it's too much of a headache for me to deal with, especially when I'm, again, wanting to attack this system from a higher level. Yeah. And I love to focus my efforts on that. I'm so proud that you are actually out there fighting for we the people. You're not an ambulance chaser. You're not out there trying to make money. You're simply out there just doing your best to make sure your countrymen, your fellow countrymen, are aware of this information. You actually reached out to me to connect with me after seeing one of my videos.
I did, yeah. I said, hey, you're 99% right. Let's tweak this. And I just love, Starla. I know of her case, and she's saying that her husband was in court recording. He has every right to do that, because then they can manipulate the system, and they can do what they want to do. And yeah, it's absolute in excess of First Amendment. But again, the law and the Constitution don't always have a place in these de facto commercial courts.
Right, exactly. So it's sad that, again, we have so many attorneys out there making so much money off of people, that are reliant upon them and their expertise to help them out of these situations, when really they could care less about the law. They could care less about your civil rights.
The other issue you run into is you're a father, you're a husband. You've got to work to, you don't have the time to sit there all day and do this stuff. And that's, again, by design. It's, their goal is to they did that exactly to me. They bankrupted me. They beat me down, and they didn't expect me to bounce back.
Right.
And that's what they do. That's the typical strategy of the courts, is to basically decimate you so that you don't fight.
Exactly.
I mean, the number one suicide rate in this country right now is parents that have had their kids taken away by courts that usually don't have the authority to do that. And they know that, and they prey on that. So there has to be some change, and it comes with education. Education is by far the most dangerous tool that we have to utilize against the government.
Yeah, it is despicable that we even have to educate ourselves on so many different things and put our lives on the line simply just to fight against those people that swore to protect us. Right. And it feels a bit backwards, and I feel like that's what's happening right now in America, is all of its backwards ways are coming to light, and we're starting to realize it for the first time in our lives. Whether we're of the millennial age group, the baby boomers, or even the zennials, or whatever the case may be. It seems like every generation is having the opportunity to step up to the plate and truly take America into its own hands and make it great the way that it should be.
Right.
opposed to the de facto sense that they've created. But Drew, we've talked about so much during this conversation. I definitely would like to have you on sometime again in the future, because I'm pretty sure we're going to have people watch this after the broadcast and have more questions and contact me. So I would
I do.
love to have you on again in the future. And definitely stay safe and out of jail until then, okay?
Will do. I'm in the mountains hiding away. So
All right, cool. And this again is Drew. He's Mr. Law, and he'll be back on the black side of liberty again soon. Drew, thank you so much, and take
thank
care
you.
until next time, bro. All right, you guys, that again was my man Drew Nelson, who is dropping in to give us a little bit more knowledge about the real law and how it applies to us, et cetera, et cetera. Please visit the website down below, gilded.gg, like gilded, backslash VSOF, like Franklin. It's right there at the bottom of the screen. You can ask him some questions, other people in the group questions. If you have your own court case or something like that, definitely come through. Appreciate you, Sheila. I'm glad you enjoyed the conversation. And all of you that dropped comments, Starla, Hugo, John E. Matthew, my lady, Crystal Wildstar was up in the house. So yeah, thank you to any and all of you for all of the comments. Do my best to make sure that you guys stay informed on the truth. And that's really what this is all about over here at the Governor Wildstar YouTube channel. So if you haven't yet, like I said, please do subscribe ASAP and make sure you stay in the loop, because I'm definitely going to have Drew again on the show in the near future. But like I was saying to my man, we got to attack this from the executive level. And that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm running for governor of California. So if you want to get things back on track here in California, please visit crowdpack.com/C/Wildstar4Gov. Help me reach my $10,000 goal so I can cover all of my basic filing fees so I can become the next governor of California. Help me get the 10,000, and I assure you I will win this next election. Third time's a try, right? So help me, help you, help we the people by donating to my campaign to become the next governor of California. Again, crowdpack.com/C/Wildstar4Gov is right there down at the bottom of the screen. Make a contribution today. Every little bit helps me get closer to that $10,000 that I need to cover the basic filing fees, et cetera, et cetera. Make sure I have a competitive campaign to become the next governor of California. We definitely got to flip things upside down from the top to the bottom. And I want to go straight to the top by becoming the next governor of California. And what all of you can also do is definitely be sure to go to recallgavin2020.com. That's recallgavin2020.com. Right at the bottom of the screen. You can read it right there. Head on over there. Help us recall the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. Get him out of office right now so we can get me in there ASAP. We're doing our best to get all of the signatures that we need before the November 17th deadline. It's creeping up quickly. So help us in that effort by signing the petition. First, of course, print it off this website, sign that, send it in, and let's make sure your vote counts, or your signature counts. And then make sure your vote counts. So when we have that recall petition option on the ballot, vote to recall his ass, get him out of office now. And also join We Have Rights, wehaverights.org. Check out the website, find out more about this nonprofit organization that I'm affiliated with. We've done our best to make sure that we can mobilize as many people as possible here in the state of California, tens of thousands of people so far, to put pressure on the governor of California, let him know we don't like what he's doing. He's not upholding his constitutional oath, and he is definitely not protecting we the people. Thank you, Jaden. Yes, sir, future governor. All right, for sure. Let's make sure that happens and join We Have Rights and make a contribution today, and you will get one of these wonderful shirts that they have here available to you, so you can sport that swag, help the organization grow, and get all of the funding that they need to hopefully put me on their payroll. Shit. Since I am working as an activist for them, helping advance their cause, and I would love to continue to work with them. But of course, got to pay the bills and make sure I keep the light on and are able to provide for myself and my family. So please definitely get involved with wehaverights.org or any of your local recall protests to, again, help put pressure on your state to get things back to normal before this new normal bullshit. And all of you out there, please definitely come back Tuesday when we'll be having another guest right here on the show at my normal time of 3 p.m. Pacific time. So come back next week, Tuesday, where I will be speaking with my guest, Michael Madrid, who is a candidate for New York Congress out there in District 10. So if you want to talk with District 10, New York Congress candidate Michael Madrid, please come back to the Black Side of Liberty next week, Tuesday. We'll be speaking with him about his campaign and what he plans on doing on turning the city around, all right? So all of my beings of light, art, culture, and knowledge out there, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for all of the comments and questions, even if we didn't understand them. And hopefully we got to each and every one of those and solved any or responded to any of your inquiries or whatever the case may be. But like I said, come back next week, Tuesday. Let's talk more then. Until then, long live liberty. Have a great weekend, y'all. I'm up out of here. Peace.